This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about Bob le Flambeur from 1956, directed by Jean-Pierre Melville. The synopsis from Letterboxd. In Paris, Bob Montan is practically synonymous with gambling and winning. He is kind, classy, and well-liked by virtually everyone in town, including Police Inspector Ledru. However, when Bob's luck turns sour, he begins to lose friends and makes the most desperate gamble of his life: to rob the Deville Casino during Grand Prix weekend when the vaults are full. Unfortunately, Bob soon learns that the game is rigged and the cops are onto him.
Was that the letterbox synopsis?
Correct.
That seems really long. Plus, is he synonymous with winning? Like, isn't the whole thing that he's like kind of?
Well, this movie starts with like he's winning at the beginning, and then he hits a losing streak, and then that's like the whole thing is like he's on this big bum run.
Okay.
Until it all turns around.
But why is it so long?
Why?
I guess the alternative is, remember last week when we were talking about that Joe D'Amato movie, Delizia? And the tagline was just, or the whole synopsis on Letterboxd was just Italian movie.
Well,
what do you prefer?
Getting into some details about how Letterboxd stuff works, it all draws on this site called the Movie Database, like tmdb.org, and it's all user created stuff. And they migrated a whole bunch of things over from IMDb to get it going, and then people kind of touch it up and add it as they go. And a lot of people sometimes just copy and paste over the information that's on IMDb, and you get people who wrote those up that are like half-assed, half-remembered. They haven't really thought it through, and no one spends the time editing and stuff like that. It's kind of like a really crappy Wikipedia, because Wikipedia, there's like people who fight to the death over information, but on these smaller sites, things like this slip through, like where you like a 2-word synopsis, even though there's like a 10-word minimum requirement, I think. I don't know. Anyways, so that's Bob le Flambeur. This is the second time I've watched this movie.
When was the first time?
I don't even know. Probably it was probably 10 years ago, because I started keeping pretty good track of my movie watching about 10 years ago, and I hadn't watched it since then. So, and my memory of this movie was it was like, I think it was the first Jean-Pierre Melville movie I had watched. Since then, I've watched subsequent movies of his, which are all like pretty well Criterion staples. Stuff like Le Samurai, which I always think of because there's the one Letterboxd user, Adam Cook, who uses it as his logo. The Man with the Hat, the sharp-dressed man.
Is that a good movie?
It's okay. It's like there's people who love it or super into it because it's like Drive, but I've always felt it was just fine. Very stylish kind of movie, but not a lot of guts to it. I think Le Cercle Rouge or particularly Army of Shadows are probably top Melville. But yeah, so Bob le Flambeur. So coming back to this movie, I kind of had like a vague memory of the movie. I remembered like Bob had this like shock of like white hair, like it's like platinum blonde, but he's like a kind of like a. In my mind, he like was a bit more smooth faced, but watching it again, he's a bit more craggy. He's a little older than I remembered. And there's just like kind of like this like bits about like he lives in this fairly nice pad in Paris in like the rough part of town, and he gambles in very stylish backgrounds with like checkered backgrounds and stuff like that. And has all these clubs, and everyone's kind of looking out for him and stuff like that. And he's got this kid that he's hanging out with. It's the son of a guy he did time with in jail who's dead. So he kind of supposed to kind of keep an eye on him. Kind of like your typical kind of trope. I feel like this has come up before, particularly Big Deal in Madonna Street, which I was thinking about quite a bit while watching this.
Me too.
Yeah, like it's very similar. It's very similar kind of idea. But this is more serious, where Big Deal in Madonna Street has like the comedy angle to it. And yeah, I mean, like he's got this like good relationship with the police inspector, so it's not like he's being like shaken down. In fact, I would there's like the relationship these two have that reminds me a bit of Heat. With Al Pacino and Robert De Niro's dynamic, where they have like they're having their dinner, saying, "I think it'd be a really bad idea if you rob that bank, or like do what you're going to do. I don't think you should do it because I mean I don't have evidence, but I've heard some stuff." And they're like, "Well, you know, you got to do what you got to do." So I mean, there's definitely traces of this movie that I think are in a lot of other things because I feel for like a generation of filmmakers, particularly ones interested in crime filmmaking, this movie was a really big deal as far as just like kind of like these type of characters and moments and stuff like that. You have like the I wouldn't call her a love interest. But you have the sex
female
worker,
figure,
the female character, your sex worker in this, who's like kind of bouncing around between like, and she's like, this is the thing. It's like we watched The Good Thief as well, which is the Neil Jordan remake from 2002.
Oh, we sure did.
Yeah, and so like it's part of his like that movie is now kind of like has some weird imprint now that I'm talking about Bob Flambeur because like they're very similar, but Good Thief we'll talk about. It's very contemporary. Well, because like in the Bob Flambeur movie, it's like it's such a nice like crime movie. You know, it's like everything's like everyone's neat, nice, and like kind of like well the gangsters are mean to one another and rough each other up, but for the most part, it's like oh these guys are classy gangsters,
pretty friendly,
classy gangsters. They're not like rough and tumble heroin addicts and like just neon lights and scuzzy nightclubs and stuff like that. It's all like you go to the cafe, you go play some cards, you stay up till 6 a.m. Everyone has a good time. There's some weird dubbed American sailors. It's all on the up and up. So for me, like Ball of Thunder's okay, like, good. Like it's a good movie. It's not a bad movie. But I don't know. Kind of like Rafif, like I don't know. I found Rafifi is another movie that came up like in the Criterion context. That movie had a little bit more of a grittiness to it that I like and appreciate a little bit more. And even like Big Deal in Madonna Street, like it's got this like loose kind of fun quality to it. It doesn't take its trappings as seriously. Whereas with Bob Flambeur, it feels like it's kind of like presenting the story as it is like it's very how would you put it? It's really
how would you put it?
It's into its own trappings. Like it's into being a noir story, and that can work. But it's also like kind of like the French interpretation of that. And the French did have their own like I mean, they've invented the expression film noir, but they had their own like history of these kind of pseudo noirish movies. But they're not American. But by this point, they would have been watching American films, and that American influence was coming into these movies, and then would come into like the French New Wave stuff, and then get regurgitated back into the American films. And so this movie kind of like represents that kind of weird turning point where American noir, which were just crime movies being made, churned out by Hollywood, were getting brought into the French films. And then French films were being watched in America, and then kind of like you wind up with the 70s crime movies, which have these kind of like anti-hero kind of characters that aren't clean cut. And even with this movie, the way that it pays off is like it doesn't have that like crime never pays ending. It does, but it doesn't. And it kind of like plays with that idea where like the guy actually does get all the money and he's probably going to get away with it. So for me, the best thing about this movie that I think elevates it above like your average crime movie from this era is the ending of the movie. Like the entire like how Bob wins. Like how it's like there's the whole movie is setting up this heist basically, and the circumstances of like why they have to pull this heist because Bob's broke. He gets this idea and he's like, man, I need this because I have no more money, and this seems easy enough to pull off. And he's got it in his history. He did this once before. He went to jail for it, but he could probably do it again with the right people. So all this kind of like effort is deployed into like making this movie. You're like, okay, we're planning out the heist. Here's we're gonna step back and have a narrator explain this is how the heist is going to go. but which is a really interesting idea, because then you're thinking, oh, then because it's kind of like in The Killing too, Kubrick's The Killing, where it's like where you get to play, you get a playthrough of like what it's supposed to look like, and it's really stylish too, because like it has the guys walking into the casino and there's nobody else, it's just them walking into an empty vacant space, and they're like, this is what's going to happen, playing through it. But then it's like that never pays off, because Bob goes in and he's a degenerate gambler and he just starts playing, and he goes on the greatest winning streak of his entire life, and he just keeps playing and keeps playing and keeps playing and keeps playing, and he cleans out the casino, and he's like on his way out being like, oh hey, like he even forgets what time it is, and then of course the heist is underway and it goes horribly wrong. A rain of gunfire, people are dropped, and you get the nonchalant French kind of like, so it goes. Like, and yeah, like, so like the whole end of this movie is like, for me, like what makes it memorable. A lot of the stuff leading into it feels kind of just there. Like, it's not bad, it's good, but it's not like, I don't think it's even like one of the like top 10 of like noir movies that I could point to, I guess, as movies I'd be like, yeah, that's excellent. This is like part of that picture, but yeah, it's
what is in the top 10?
I'd have to make a list. Like,
you don't know offhand?
No, I don't.
You're gonna hit me with a comment like that and then not have any follow through?
You pay me.
You already mentioned one. What about The Killing? Do you think The Killing is in the top 10?
No.
No?
No.
What about Following by Christopher Nolan? I know that you're a big fan of that movie.
Garbage. Anyway. Hey, RJ.
What
did you think of Bob Le Flambeur and your first Melville movie?
So who is this Melville guy? Why should I know him?
So he's like, well, I don't know. He's a Criterion dude. If you're into crime movies, and I don't think you really are, but like he's kind of like he's a good representative. It's like him and like Jules Destassin, who did Rafifi. They're like kind of these guys who you see their names pop up. They're genre filmmakers, and it seems like genre movies in the Criterion always do well as being crossover movies, because everybody likes crimes. They like their westerns. So when they pop in the Criterion, there's like bigger demand for that sort of thing. And like his movies, like he's got Le Doulos, which I've never seen.
The Samurai.
The Samurai. And then you have his submarine movie, which I haven't seen. The Science de l'Amour, which is again like these kind of formative movies that he was making earlier on. And there's like the one when he starts working with Alan Dassin, like Un Flic, which I've heard is like absolutely amazing. He gets better as he gets going, I think.
Does he have any sci-fi movies?
No. He does not.
He's got a really cool picture on Letterboxd. He looks like Udo Kier in like the 80s playing a western like cowboy. I don't not like totally Udo Kier. That was just the first thing that popped in my mind. He looks like a cowboy.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Bob Le Flambeur. Yeah, this movie's pretty good. I mostly feel the same way that you do. I too like the ending quite a bit. My favorite line in this movie is when he is confronted by the detective, and the detective goes, "Hey, asshole."
Yeah.
And then there's just like a pause, and he's like, yeah. He's like, let's go. I thought that was super funny, and that kind of made the movie for me. But I'm kind of with you where I think one thing I liked about this movie is that there's this big build up, and there's all these little things about Bob's character that you're kind of like, for me at least, I was kind of wondering why some of those things were here, and what they were leading up to. And then I feel like a lot of that stuff kind of gets not like thrown out, but it's deemed less important near the end, because what it all comes down to is just him gambling. He's taken over by that beast of gambling that we call Gambler, and he just can't control himself, and he can't leave, and he can't make his daughter her Florida costume
well, RJ, I think it's what we call in the business misdirection of expectation.
See, you're sounding like a Hollywood executive. You sound like M. Night Shyamalan.
Ooh.
explaining the delicacies of glass before it is released. Yeah, no, like I really like that because I was like, so that's why it's called Bob Le Flamble. That's why he's the gambler. Because when it all came down to it, he just couldn't control himself. I've had that problem too, man. You leave me alone in front of some snacks and some goodies, I can't control myself either sometimes. It happens. I get it. But I did like how, like I said, not that prior things are thrown out, but they're just they're almost deemed like moot because it's like I'm just gonna gamble, and then he comes out and he just sees like all of his hired goons and buddies, and they've already like been defeated, and he's like, oh, okay. Like he neither group has any influence on each other. What he does doesn't matter to the goons and like or the robbers, and what they do has no no relevance to him almost.
Well, the thing with like it's so strange with that. I think the one beat that's really off, and that's like kind of like where I was mentioning, like kind of like that cliche French attitude of like life, it comes and goes. It's like, yeah, here's this kid that I was like very concerned about, like not getting like messed up into the business, and he's been gunned down and he's dead now. Oh well, and like he's just kind of like fine. He's very fine with this. And you're like, huh? Because it's like in Big Deal in Madonna Street. It's kind of a similar dynamic where it's like you have like the kind of your middle-aged criminal who's like doing one last job, and he's got like kind of like the friend, somebody's friend's son he's looking out for. It's right out of the paperbacks that this stuff obviously
kind of like Hard Eight.
Yeah. There's always like the mentor kind of apprentice dynamic to some of these things. It's a trope, and that's fine. But yeah, I found like his like you get the moment where he's holding him up and he doesn't get like the final thing. He doesn't say anything. He just kind of gurgles out blood and then dies. And then he's kind of like, oh, well, I got the money. And that's the thing is like, well, he's got all this money, and you have to assume that he's going to like probably take care of everybody. Maybe in theory, like everything suggests that he would do that though. One of the other really nice moments with Bob for me is like his dealing with the pimp. And like, because sometimes in a movie you kind of expect that, yeah, he's a pimp, but pimping ain't easy. It's pretty cool. But no, he's like, no, you're a piece of shit, and I'm not giving you a goddamn cent. Which kind of also sets up everything kind of going downhill. Which is also kind of a Heat-like moment because you have like Waingro.
Wayne's World? Did you just say
Waingro?
From Heat?
Yeah, where like he's like there's kind of like where De Niro has like nothing but disdain for Waingro, and he's like, fuck this guy. This guy's no good. And then Waingro's the one who kind of like fucks everything up in the end, because he's just floating around. It's just on the edges of the story. I'm positive Michael Mann is probably a very big fan. It's probably name drop Bob Le Flambeur, because I think what's his Robert De Niro's name in Heat? Is it Bob? I wonder.
In Heat? I don't know. Let me check for it.
I'll look. You talk about the movie though, RJ. This is your time.
Is it my time? Yeah. So I do like the ending too, because it kind of builds up to those things. Some things that I didn't really follow through as much, where it's kind of like I never really understood why he was kind of like the gambler with the heart of gold, and maybe it doesn't need to be explained, or maybe I just missed it, but I was kind of like, why does he take this girl in? I'm not really like sure what the point of that was. Why he would take her in? Like, do you know? Like other than to show that he's a good guy?
I think that's it.
That's it?
I think that's it. Bobby De Niro's character's name is Neil.
Neil? Okay. Neil Young?
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, I didn't really know that, but I thought the introduction of that young girl was really funny. When they talk about like a girl that looks older than she is, and then they describe him as an old young man. And then she's like walking around eating fries, and she just full on like is littering. She's throwing shit.
Oh yeah.
Some guy on a motorcycle is like, "Hey, you littering whore! Why don't you get over here, sugar?" And she like hops on his motorcycle and like just takes off. And I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like, I didn't understand. I was like, "Is this her job, or is that what France was like at the time?" People were just throwing shit everywhere and hopping on motorcycles from guys who call you like big tits and stuff. There's a lot of sugar daddy talk in this, and it's like, oh, you're too pretty to be in this this joint, doll. I got some good screen caps and stuff like that. Because I feel like that's how you talk to me sometimes off air, and people don't realize that you're kind of a monster too.
Yeah, I'm pretty toxic.
1950s Frenchmen, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
We were bordering on some Italian levels of sexism here.
Mm.
That's a politically correct way to put that, right?
Sure, pal.
But yeah, I liked the way that the heist was planned out with the big field with like the actual measurements and stuff like that. I thought that was cool, and then I liked how they did the walkthrough in his mind. I like that a lot too. I also like in this movie how there's a lot of talk about clams. They refer to all money as clams. I thought that was really funny. I don't know why. They're just like, how much do you have left? 700 clams. And like it happened once. I was like, oh, that's funny. And then it happened like 6 more times. And I was like, God damn. There's a lot of clam talk in this Bobla Flamba. So that stuff was cool. One other thing that I really liked was the giant gambling sticks that the dealers had.
The spatulas.
Yeah, the huge spatulas to lift up like cards and like their chips. I also liked how comically enormous the gambling chips were.
Mm-hmm.
Like the money or
yeah.
I don't know what they're actually called, but like what he was gambling with, very Casino Royale style, where it's the full-on card chip, but in this, it's the size of like the hood of a car. He's just like dropping it on the table, and this guy's got like a huge pizza spatula, and he's just like, ugh, and he like flips it over the table.
There's your $1 million, sir.
There's your $1 million. You got to give it to those guys though. They had like incredible dexterity with those big sticks.
Yeah.
Like with not dropping those cards everywhere.
That's wrist control.
Yeah. I was in awe of that stuff. So, I really like that. I was a little thrown off though when he was playing, and there was crowds behind him reacting to his cards, and I was like, "Hey, you can't do that." Like if he was playing blackjack, I guess it wouldn't matter, but still, like, isn't that a common courtesy? Like, because he was playing against someone, so wouldn't it be?
Well, I think the thing is,
wasn't
he like when he was playing blackjack, right? He kept hitting 21, and it doesn't matter. There's no plan because he kept getting 2 cards, and it was like 21, 21, 21, 21. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter if anyone sees it because they're going to see the cards and be like, holy shit, he just hit 21 again.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But yeah. if you look closely, when he first looks at the cards like to himself, and there's like 9 people behind him like peering over his shoulder. They're like, oh, fuck, what's he got? And then they react to it like as a crowd. And I was like, I wonder if you could get away with that in the bigs. One thing I didn't like, Jarrett, is the music. I thought it was kind of all over the place. Where the one that shows it best for me is when Paulo, he is like, that's his name, right?
Yeah,
Paulo,
his buddy.
Yeah, when he when he finds out that the girl did him dirty, and he's going after the pimp, and he's like running down the streets. He's like running on different streets, and like when he's on a different street, the music cuts to something else. And at first I thought, I was like, oh, is the music changing to like the street he's on because the music is coming like from whatever street he's on? It's like coming from that building. But I don't think that's the case because it cycled through a couple of the same ones in that sequence. So I don't know. I was a little confused by that, and I was like, I don't really like how the music is all over the place. But the last things that I'll say that you already brought up is I was thinking about Big Deal on Madonna Street as well. I think that one has charm and humor to it where I think I don't know if it was like the mood I was in that day. I thought that one was a little funner to watch. Like this isn't supposed to be a fun movie, I guess, but I did think Big Deal on Madonna Street was a little bit funner, I guess maybe just because it's humorous. But the other thing is I was thinking about The Killing a lot too, because I actually like The Killing quite a bit, and I know that is a future creep, like years and years from now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was thinking about that, and I was like, maybe I should watch The Killing, and then I was like, oh yeah, we don't watch Criterions outside of the podcast anymore because we've ruined that joy for ourselves. That's forever. Right. We can. We've talked about it before, but I can't watch Criterions anymore. Not in like real life.
Well, yeah, you can. You can just.
But what's the point?
Well, then you just watch the movie again, like 8 years from now.
No. You like that I have
You just
raw
or you just
reactions.
no, I don't care about that. You can just watch Robot Monster instead, I guess.
Hey, I mean, it was worth taking a gamble on Robot Monster.
Ah,
The
gamble.
the alien, the gambler, the design of the alien of the Roman in Robot Monster is, I gotta say, that's better than any horseshit H.R. Geiger ever came up with. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's my hot rub on Bob the Flamba.
Yeah. Hey RJ.
What?
We also watched the remake
Oh God.
of
Okay.
Bob Le Flambeur.
So I'll let you
So
talk about
okay.
this, but
So I was like in my mind after we watched this, I was like, there was like I think there's a remake, right? Or I felt like something made me think there's something. So I went to Wikipedia, as you do, and I looked it up and I went, oh shit, that's right. The Good Thief, directed by old Neil Interview with the Vampire Jordan. Also,
Criterion alum.
a Mona Lisa from from old 2002. I remember this DVD floating around for years and years and years.
Hmm?
Stars one Nick Nolte.
The natural himself, the
Yeah.
pretty boy, the wonder boy.
I don't know. I feel like when I was watching this, my enjoyment all just derived from like how incomprehensible Nick Nolte his performances grow as time goes on, and it's like so perfectly captured by Tim Heidecker in the film The Comedy, where he just like breaks into this like Nick Nolte impersonation that is just absolutely amazing. Because it's like how everyone's got a Michael Caine impersonation. I think everyone should also have a Nick Nolte impersonation.
The size of a tangerine.
Yeah, there you go. And
Is that a good Michael Caine?
horrible, just like everyone else's. So The
Nice.
Good Thief, it's so RJ. When I was watching Bob the Flambeur, I was like, you know what would make this movie better? I think Bob should have a heroin addiction. And
How come?
And Neil Jordan shows up and goes, "I've got you covered."
You got it, pal.
So this movie,
Do you want other people to have heroin addictions too?
So this movie kicks off. So Nick Nolte plays haggard, shitty, like dumpy Bob. He's in Paris, or no, Nice. He's in Nice, I think, in this one off the Riviera, because it's probably cheaper to shoot there than Paris.
Mm-hmm.
But goddamn, he's doing heroin in a club. The first time you see him, he's shooting up our girl sees him and she's just like, "Whoa, hey, having fun there, shooting up." He's like, "Ah, it's not a big deal." And the movie continues on where it's like, "Oh, this is Bob Le Flambeur as a remake," because he's like, "Oh, he's a good guy," but he like also breaks up an Argentinian who's holding the new police inspector up with a gun, and then Bob shows up with heroin needles to stab him in the arm. And he's like, "Why did you do that? Why are you such a good guy?" And then this is all in between this slow motion editing, which I was watching, and I'm like, "Oh man, RJ's gonna love this so much. He loves slow motion editing so much. It's his favorite thing in the world, and this movie's got so much of it. It's got these like abrupt edits and cuts to things, and like at the end of a scene it'll just go to slow motion for like a couple seconds for no reason, for nothing at all. How about that final shot though, RJ? The jump cutting of them walking down the deck to like music jauntily. Yeah, so The Good Thief, it pretty well covers the same ground as Bob Le Flambeur. But it's modern. It's very modern because everything's scummy and horrible. Everyone's dirtbags. There's like all the same characters, but they've kind of like condensed some characters here and there. They try to like tie things up so it feels a little bit more logical, I guess. But this time, though, instead of just like going in to steal cash money, they're going to steal paintings because that's easy. That's an easy thing to get rid of. Way easier than cash money that a casino wouldn't be really keeping track of.
Sure.
And then they're gonna use a fence played by Ralph Fiennes. And like, man, Ralph Fiennes is one of those guys that I either like am like totally cool with him in a movie, or I find him like awful. Like he goes one way or the other for me. And this is one of the latter cases where I just like I hate him in this. He's just like
Good.
every like shitty like I'm crazy. I got a guy who's got a knife and he's gonna cut your face up because I'm serious. And it's
Look how serious I
yeah.
am.
You get so you have scenes with like Nick Nolte, who apparently said that he tried a little bit of heroin to get into character because he's
A
so,
little bit?
he to get into character because he's so method. And of course, this was like around the same
Wow.
period when remember when Nick Nolte got arrested and like looked like a bag of shit in his like booking photo. That legend
heroin?
for like substance abuse and like drunk and like he was a total mess. That's why he like went off the. He was in the movies for a while. We'll just say that because he was up right around this time. He was a big pile of shit. And yeah, so it's never a good idea to try just a little bit of heroin because bad things probably are going to happen.
Do you think it would have worked better if you tried a lot instead of just a little?
Well, I can go all the way,
Why not?
So, yeah, good thief, huh? This movie is just. Like I don't know, I was like okay with the movie for maybe the first half hour, and then like there came a point where I was just like, this movie can fuck off. This is so boring. This is just like every modern crime movie that comes out that's just like lifeless, uses a bunch of like fancy camera tricks and editing to like cover up the fact that there's not much to it. But it's like, here's an exotic locale, here's some regional specific music, but it's hip hop and French, right? That's great. That'll carry us through. It gives it flavor. Neil Jordan kind of did this same thing for there's his vampire movie Byzantium, I think it's pronounced.
Oh yeah,
and it's the same shit, like this kind of like heavy Euro trash vibe to it, where you're just like everything's neon and grungy, and oh shit, there's sexy European girls everywhere, but they're all in the sex trade, so it's all grimy. I don't know. This movie is not good. What do you think, RJ?
Yeah, this movie sucks. I was like 5 minutes into this, and I messaged Jared. I was like, "So, you're the good thief, huh?" Because I think it's at 5 minutes that they have one of these fast slow motion scenes that you talked about, and I have mentioned how much I fucking hate those. And it's so weird when they do it, where it's either a full slow motion or it's a fast slow motion. So it's like slow motion, but there's like parts of it that are sped up, and there's like a filter over it to distort the color or something. Like
It's like fake slow motion.
Yeah, it's fake slow motion, and it drives me crazy because it's so shitty and it looks so bad. And there's never any reason for it to exist in any of these movies that it's in, because it's like you said, it comes out like completely unsolicited.
There's like an entire like 15-year window of cinema where this filter, like this effect, happens in movies. And it's just there.
It comes out of nowhere. It's like, why is that here? It's like, nobody knows. We just needed something for this thing. Like, I guess what you said, to cover up that either it's boring or that it doesn't look good. It's like, well, why don't we just add this thing in here?
It's like a weird influence of like that people always talk about, like music video editing that kind of like creeps up in the 80s and 90s, and people don't really necessarily know what that means when they say it, but I feel like this would be a prime example of like bad decision making as far as like filmmaking goes.
Bad decision making. Yeah, I thought the good thief sucked real hard. I didn't know why he had to be a heroin addict. I didn't know why the girl was like an insatiable nymphomaniac. I didn't know why any of the decisions
when she smokes crack.
When she smokes crack, I was like, I don't know why any of this stuff is happening, and I don't really care either. That was the biggest part of it, was I don't really care.
But he knows so much about art. He just knows names because that's like the shorthand of like I know about art because look, I studied art history. I just know because I love Paris.
Hey Jared, I don't know if you know, but Van Gogh was the thief of the art world.
I like ice cream. Oh, that's more Tom. Sorry, it's like getting to Tom Waits territory.
I was gonna say, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, no. Then remember like the scene where like he's trying to kick and he's like handcuffed himself to the bed, and she's like, "Oh, that's kinky." And then he's like, when he's like in the throes of like withdrawal, she's like starts doing this like seductive dance in her bra and panties, saying, "Do you want the key?" And it's like, what a bitch! Like, what is wrong with her? Why is she such a bad person?
So I can speak to that. That is actually how they do detoxing at a lot of the Hollywood, like, you know, all those places where people go to get clean.
They trot out like Eastern European like 17-year-old girls and tempt you with the key.
How do you think Alec Baldwin got cured?
Well, see, I don't know. Does anyone ever get cured?
I mean, does anyone have free will or free choice at all? Even these are big issues that it's just only scratching the surface of the complexity that is The Good Thief. Hey, The Good Thief sucks. I feel bad. Like I'm a little bit mad that you told me to watch it.
Oh, yeah, because you have to suffer with me.
I get it, and like I did watch it because I was like, Neil Jordan. It is a literal remake. If I don't watch it now, I'll never want to watch it again because I'll be like, there's no use talking about it. But at the same time, I don't like you, and I don't like the things that you force upon me. So,
yeah, but you'll be here next week and the week after that because you're here for the abuse.
I will be, but we're working on a replacement for you. So I got to still talk with the producers. That sounds
amazing.
Well, we'll see. Maybe it'll happen.
So yeah, Good Thief. I've seen some people think like highly of this movie though too, but I know like when this movie came out, like I never wanted to see it. Like there's nothing appealing about it at all.
There still isn't,
and there isn't to this day. Like, I don't know. Maybe this stuff will age really well. Kind of like how I remember a period of time when like watching 80s movies was a trial and nobody was into it. Maybe like another like 15, 20 years from now, like Good Thief will be like, it's like better than Thief. Because there was an era, and people won't believe me, where like Michael Mann aesthetics were frowned upon quite heavily as very 80s. The music and the style of it, people were not fans. I
believe you.
Swear.
I mean, people didn't like John Carpenter either, right?
Yeah, like a lot of things. So, like maybe we just haven't aged gracefully yet into The Good Thief. We're not where it's at yet.
I don't think you and me will ever age gracefully. We're already half in the hole. Yeah. I'm looking at Jarrett. His body is just
falling apart.
Just unsettling to look at. There's so much skin. There's so much gross stuff falling out.
Hey, RJ, you want to hear about who hates Bob Le Flambeur?
Does anybody? Has anyone even seen this movie?
Thomas Kiskinen. 2 stars. There's like a 1.5 star that's like way too long. But they mentioned they don't like the music either. The music didn't bother me. I don't remember it at all. It was just kind of, I felt typical, I guess, of kind of a jazzier kind of score, I suppose. Okay. What does Thomas say? A movie like Bob the Gambler hinges on its lead's ability to charm the pants off you and keep you invested in his story. But Bob the Gambler did the opposite. He irritated me. He's the typical middle-aged man who surrounds himself with young, impressionable faces who look up to him and prod up his ego. He chases off a pimp who is trying to chat up a young girl that he can exploit. A noble act, which is then followed up with Bob telling the girl what's appropriate for her, how to act, where to be, and what she should be. Typical man stuff, because women are helpless little creatures who need to be told what to do by men. Bob constantly looks annoyed. He has this piercing scowl to him, as if he was distrustful of everyone around him. I didn't find him charming in any way at all, and I wasn't invested in the story. The movie could have been salvaged with a strong supporting cast, but for the most part, the ensemble is filled with serviceable stock characters, but nothing more. I also hated how little tension there was in the movie. As if I wasn't bored enough already, the excitement had to be low also. The one thing I did enjoy was the ending note, which could have been amazing in a better movie.
So Thomas Kiskinen, I am actually on board with all of their 5-star movies are a lot of 5-star movies that I have as well. The only place that they fall off for me is they just gave, well, not just, but they gave Wild Hogs 1 star, which I feel like is really unfair to Wild Hogs. And then they also gave What Women Want 1 star, which, if you'll remember, was on last week's Who Hated. One of those people also was shitting on What Women Want. To which I ask you, Jarrett, what's wrong with What Women Want? Because I actually think that movie's pretty good.
Mel Gibson, probably.
Yeah, I think you would be on board with most of this person's ratings as well. So,
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about Bob as a likable or unlikable character?
who, me?
Yeah.
I thought he was fine.
Yeah.
It was like I said. The only thing I was like, well, why does he take this girl in just to show that he's like a nice guy? And then I was like, oh, he is a nice guy. Like that's what the pimp scene shows. But there was never a time when I was like, I really want to hang out with Bob.
No,
You know?
that's true.
He's not
Yeah.
like a cool dude. He's just kind of like
No.
he's just an old guy.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, yeah. So there's the other thing that Nick Nolte. So again, The Good Thief. The one thing that like when I said like I was kind of okay with this movie for the first half hour because I was like as always amused by Nick Nolte's incomprehensibility, but he also had like that Bukowski like there's like this burnout kind of like
Yeah.
alcoholic writer and kind of France vibe that is always kind of like charming. There's this one movie called Crazy Love that has the same kind of thing going for it in its last act. And I always like kind of like that idea, but it all depends on what you do with that idea. You have to like make it interesting and not be like, all right, now we're just going to attach it to this crime classic movie and have a heroin addict. That's a tough thing to get someone likable. But hey, give me Barfly any day of the week.
Yeah, Barfly is really good, and Bukowski is really good too.
Yeah.
Like
Hey,
the guy. What?
we got a regular in the hate category, Rembrandt Q Pumpernickel.
Ah, yeah, this person's all over the hate train.
2 stars. What if not that? This is a phrase I've been repeating to
What?
people. What if not that? This is a phrase I've been repeating to people over the past 4 or so months. It's my term for the simplest sort of genre play where a filmmaker, or other type of artist, sees the conventions of some form or plot expectation or aesthetic device and asks, what if not that? It's the Twilight Zone, or at least the worst episodes, something built only on frustrated expectations. Bob Flambeur is very good at frustrating expectations for a noir, but I kept asking to what end and not coming up with any sort of satisfying answer. It's an atypical film, but then what? It ends almost suddenly in a weird and melancholic way that rejects a lot of the epic darkness and anguish of most noir, which I appreciate, but I am still left asking why. Sadly, the only thing Bob Flambeur doesn't seem to really question is the misogyny of noir films. That's mostly left unaddressed. So I think what they're getting at is like kind of what we talked about earlier is like that circumvention of like we don't get the heist, we get this whole other scene kind of play out, and I guess for some that's not enough. It's gonna be like, but why? And yeah, I get also like the idea of like the Twilight Zone, like the worst episodes where you're just like flipping something on its ear for the sake of flipping it on its ear rather than like having a justification for that idea. Which, fair enough, but I don't feel like this movie is like that egregious of an example of doing that. I feel like this is a movie that is, I guess you could say, like a filmmaker experimenting with a genre that they obviously like quite a bit. And they just kind of made this story, but decided to go in a different direction. Whatever. Lots of movies do it. Sometimes just doing a straight up, like, hard knuckles version of the story is the best way of going because that can be satisfying in itself. But sometimes inventing stuff is, why not? There's enough of these things. You could try something else out too. Make your thing stand out.
I think we've always aimed to be the hard R knuckles version of podcasts.
Yeah. Meat and potatoes.
Yeah. I've mentioned before about Rembrandt Q Pumpernickel. They like good movies like Criterion's, lots of Kurosawa. There was Perfect Blue in there, lots of good stuff. But I think they're also professional troll because they gave King Kong a half a star, The Last Picture show a half a star.
Is there a review though for King Kong about racism?
Doesn't look like it, but I mean it could. But they did also give Beyond the Black Rainbow a half a star. But In the Mood for Love, half a star. See, I think they're professional troll.
That's when we probably heard from them last.
Yep. Professional troll.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the internet for you.
What about the internet?
That's it right there in a nutshell. In a letterboxed review, it's all about trolling.
Is that all of it?
That's it. It's all one big elaborate con.
To what end, Jarrett?
It's just like at the end of The Good Thief, where it was all one big con because they got all the money anyway, and then they got a check, and then they walk away on the beach.
But hey, maybe I'll sue you for damages. It's not. It doesn't play as good in.
No, it's all in Bob Flambeur. It's great. It's a great final shot. Him just smiling. It's like kind of the flip side to Mona Lisa or not. Good Friday. I'm thinking.
Yep.
Of. Yeah.
Ooh, Good Friday had a great ending.
The best part of that movie, the music and that final shot.
Oh yeah, I miss him.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, we're talking about Bob Hoskins.
Yeah, not this other Bob.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
After the break, we're suing for damages.
I'm gonna sue you for all that weird shit that you touched me with. Those long gamble war sticks.
Yeah, those things are pretty weird.